All right, Matt is here. What's going on, Matt?
What's going on with you, brother? How you doing, Doc?
I am good. I am good. Hold on, I'm going to try and turn your volume up a little so I can hear you better. You having a good Sunday?
Yeah, man. It's uh an actual relaxing Sunday.
You don't have to work today for once.
No, I'm answering emails and all that kind of stuff, but I don't have to go anywhere. I can stay home and watch a little football and be a dad and be a husband. All that good stuff.
Yeah, I feel like you've been going pretty hard the last few weekends, right? Have you been like 7 days a week, like no breaks, or what's your schedule been like?
Oh man, schedule's been kind of hectic a little bit, because working on several different things at one time requires a lot of different movements. So yeah, man, I've been going to the studios, um, working on with the Queens thing, recording with them, and then also scoring some stuff and just kind of doing a little bit of everything. So my schedule's been kind of wild, because with my job I have to kind of be open, especially with Queens, because with the actors and the actresses, the pre-records are kind of demanding and fit around their schedule. So definitely doing that, which is really cool. But yeah, so I kind of have to sometimes drop what I'm doing to go to the city and work, or rely on guesstimating some stuff. The goal is to try to stay ahead of everybody. That's the goal.
Right. Yeah. So well, all right. So a couple of things. If you're in the room, this is a new room that we've started in Control Camp called Film Score Conversations, Film Score Convos. Matt and I we've actually been talking ourselves for the last few months on Zoom, just getting information going through his filmography because we're working on a book together. And so we're just trying to capture all the stories around his really pretty extensive filmography, and so we thought it would be really cool to take these conversations and bring them on to Clubhouse and share them with you. And you've been seem to be reacting well to that, so we just kind of keep this going every week. It's kind of week to week because, as we just said, Matt's schedule can be pretty erratic, and so I'm thankful that we actually get him for a few hours today. So do me a favor, if you're in the audience, ping some people into this room. We're going to have a really cool convo. So hit the plus sign on the bottom of your Clubhouse app and let your friends know that we've got some really cool music, film score, film industry conversations happening. We're going to get into some real great projects that Matt is on right now. Specifically, most currently is Queens, which just launched on ABC. I watched the first episode the other day, Matt, and I really really like this show. Before we jump into that, tell let's just because some people are getting introduced to you, so give them the 60 second 30-second intro to Matt Head.
Okay. Yeah, I am Matthew Head. I'm a film composer, music producer, based in the Atlanta area, Atlanta, Georgia, born and raised right here. I'm actually from Marietta, which is like 20 minutes, about 20 miles northwest of the city, so in the suburbs. But born and raised here, started making music at a young age of 5 or 6, making tracks, making beats, pursuing music was a hobby for me. It was one of those things where it was something cool to do. I got lucky and blessed to be a part of some amazing projects, as far as scoring actual television shows and film. And then also, being a music producer and that kind of thing on a lot of different television series as well. So um, that's me in a nutshell. I make music every day, and I put it to picture and visuals.
Very cool. So let's talk about some. I was thinking about it this week, Matt, and and I don't know if this is the first time in your career, but you got like a number of your productions and on either on screen at the same time or getting ready to come on screen. So you're on the music team for Queens, right? That just premiered this week, I believe. I think the first
Mhm.
episode was this week. All right, so that's on now. You're the music producer for P Valley on the show on Stars, which I love. That second season's coming out when?
I don't know.
Or have they announced that yet? No. Okay, so that should be
Yeah,
coming soon.
yeah. And I'm also I'm the composer for that too.
Composer
So
for
I'm
that,
doing
and
it.
it's composer
Yeah,
and producer.
yeah, yeah,
Very cool. And then Family Business is out now, and you're the composer for that show on BET Plus. And so
yeah.
multiple projects, big projects in the works at the same time. Is this the first time there's that many at this level happening concurrently?
Um, yes and no. They don't really overlap too much, too often. And so, but when they do, it's cool. And the way we, do our deals and contracts and stuff like that, because technically we have to be careful of juggling too many things at one time. So the schedules have to align the right way, especially with with my deals and stuff. And like I said, Queens is a little bit more of a music department type job. So I'm not the one in charge. And the way I kind of prioritize is more so when I'm needed kind of thing. Queens is a really unique opportunity that came my way, and it was one of those things where it was like, hey, can you do this for us real quick, which opened up to actually being a part of the show bigger than what I thought it was going to be. So it was literally it was one of those. It was a relationship conversation that we can kind of get deeper into. But as far as the other shows like Family Business and P Valley, those stuff was already done. Deals were done like a year ago, so it was one of those things where I didn't anticipate Queens. It was one of those, hey, can you do this for us real quick? And then that turned into, hey, well, we have to do the rest of the season, and we're comfortable with you doing it. So can you continue to do it? And so Queens is very open to working around my schedule. So it usually I don't like to have multiple things going at one time, to be honest with you, because of I just don't like it. It keeps the creativity kind of it may hurt the creativity. Also scheduling. I want to be on time for things. I don't want to be so I try to juggle at least two or three at a time. So right now it's kind of hectic, but um, respectively, everybody is kind of respecting what I bring to the table. And so, like I said, P Valley is number one. Um, and we're still working on that. And I can't have too, and to be real, I can't talk too deep about P Valley yet because we haven't, we're still in the midst of shooting it and producing it and all that kind of stuff. Um, but it's coming for sure. But family business is done. That was done a little earlier during the summer. You were a part of that earlier this year, so we were knocking that out. And like I said, Queens literally came out of nowhere. That did not see Queens coming, and it was literally, hey, can you do this job? Can you help us with this real quick? And it was one of those. I literally thought it was gonna be like a pilot situation because we did the pilot first, and then that turned into the show got picked up, and now we need to do the rest of the season. And are you available? And
You know,
so
but
it's just
that's
one of those things.
interesting because I mean we've talked about this that dynamic has happened a number of times with you. I mean it's kind of like what happened with you and I on Greenleaf. You reached out to me for one song and said, "Hey, can you just kind of write a song?" And then that turned to working on a whole season and part of the
Yeah,
next.
it was the same exact thing. It was literally I got a call, hey, from a friend of mine that works on the show, and literally said, hey, are you available to literally record record the pilot episode? It was literally a record. As a matter of fact, it was literally. Do you know any studios in Atlanta to record? It was that. Like, and I was like, yeah, I know a studio. Yeah, I know some places. And it was me sending an email. And then that turned into, well, some of the production wanted to make sure a vocal producer was involved or the music producer involved because, we're still dealing with COVID. And we were dealing with COVID a little bit heavier then. This is before everybody was getting vaccinated. This is way before, this was like January, February of this year. So it was a little bit still kind of touchy with the pandemic going on, and Hollywood was slowly trying to open back up. So they wanted somebody familiar and be in the room and making sure that someone was available and all that kind of stuff. So I was asked to do that. It was like, hey, can you just be in the room, make sure everything's great? And then it turned into, um, uh, you know, can you produce it? Can you just literally do it, put it together, and help out with this? Because I'm not the music producer. I'm the vocal producer, music producer on the show. But Swiss Beats is actually the executive music producer, and and he has a team of producers that are sending us some amazing songs, and they send them to us, and then I go in and do some creative changes here and there, but not too crazy, and just literally help, vocal produce and arrange some things and make it feel like it needs to feel. Send it back to them, and they approve it and mix it and all that kind of stuff. And it's like a big, huge team. And it's fun. It's fun. And so it literally that was the initial thing. And then when the season got picked up, the show got picked up. Uh, I was thinking they were going to fly, those guys down here, and all that good stuff. But they were like, no, the girls like what you did. They like, I was going, and it was fun, and they thought it was great. The studio was great, and everything was great. So let's just keep it going, and that's how it happened. So my schedule got hectic really quick after that. But so yeah, it literally was a can you do me this favor conversation, which turned into we need you to finish it conversation, and that's how my career has been a lot lately. I mean, career been throughout the years, from even family business to P Valley and even Greenleaf. It was everything was kind of like, can you do this? And I did it, and I did it good. And they were like, all right, great, can you finish it? Which is to me, which is really cool. And that's how you and I met. Same thing. It was like, I learned, that very quickly with you. Like, hey, can you do this? Yeah, great. And then you did it, and like, cool. And this industry is a little bit different than the music side of it, because we have to service the show and service the needs of the show and service the wants of the show. So we don't have time to kind of deal with the egos a little bit. We have to kind of be a little bit more team players and understand that we are a piece of a huge puzzle. And so um, being available, being consistent, and understanding your role is way more important than actually having the title and trying to be in charge and run the show. It was literally like, it's cool to be. And then once you see it on screen, and you see your name on screen, and you see the thank yous and the appreciation of the hard work, you're like, wow, I can literally say I worked on an amazing show. And also working with people like, with Brandy and Eve, people I like literally listened to and grew up with. And, Brandy's a couple years older than me, but I'm like, yo, like you were my child, you were my teenage high school years. Like I listened to you. And same with Eve. And so just to work with them on a regular basis on that level is like, wow, okay, this is amazing. So
We were
yeah, so that's really what it is,
we were
you
talking
know.
in our room on Wednesday about Queens and how because I watched the first episode and how like I love Brandy, but I've actually never heard. I don't think I've ever heard Brandy rap before, and so you would think that like Eve would be like the rapper, but like Brandy's like spitting so hard, like real, like she's coming real hard and real with it. Like it's real dope to see how, as an actress and as a musician, how she just becomes whatever she needs to become, which is
Oh
really
yeah,
really dope.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, when I first met her, we recorded. Brandy's a beast. I mean, she's a beast. I mean, across the board. So when she walked in the studio and we had the lyrics and everything, and I mean, coaching Brandy is not even it's amazing, and she's very coachable. She understands rap. She can rap for real, for real. It's not no one is like what you hear is who she is, and it's just amazing. And it's she embodies the character so much and embodies the industry so much. So what it is what it is. And I'm just happy to be in the room with her. To be honest with you, I tell her all the time, like, I'm just happy to be here with you. And she's like, no, you help me. I'm like, yo, I'm just happy to be here. Because it's amazing, what she does. And even the others, Eve, of course, is like, okay, Eve is Eve. But Naturi and Nadine, like they are all, they embody these characters so much that they are queens. and they take it seriously. These girls are taking it so seriously when they come in the studio with us, and they're walking out sweating, they're knocking them out, and this is who they are. They're not. This is not a situation where they're being. We're not in the studio for 10 hours. We're in there for a couple hours and they're gone. Their schedules are so hectic, so they're rehearsing themselves and coming in prepared. And like I said, what you see is who they are. Like I'm doing very little. And the songs are great too. Swiss is giving us some great songs as well. So it's one of those things like we're just like, yo, just do what you hear, and they killing it. And they're creating with it. They're adding some things to it. They're adding, and they know their characters. They know who they are as far as musicians wise and artists wise, but they also as actresses, they know their characters and they want to have their characters' voices in the lyrics and in their delivery. And I'm just there to make sure that it sounds good and make sure they're comfortable while they're doing it.
That is great. I really just insightful. Right, as we're
Yeah.
talking, I brought a couple people who are in the room up on stage. Pepe, who is part of a really cool sync agency. I mean, she's a creator herself, but also part of a really cool agency called What Up Pitches that uh, does a lot in the sync placement space. How you doing, Pepe? Oh, she may have stepped away. Or you're muted, Pepe. I don't know if you know you're muted.
Hey, how are you, Eric?
I'm good. Good to see you.
Hi, everybody. Good to see you too.
And then Atik, who works with the NFL, is here always supporting our rooms, and so appreciate seeing you, Atik. How you doing?
I'm good. I'm just I'm working the Lions Rams games for Fox. I'm doing stats for them, so I'm trying to get over to the stadium, but it's traffic is kind of backed up a little bit.
Oh, crazy!
So,
You're in the car right now. Got
yeah, I
it.
figured I'd jump. Yeah, I'm always driving. I'm always in the room when I'm driving, or in rooms when I'm driving. So, but
Appreciate you
yeah, I
stopping
figured
in.
I'd jump in. Yeah, of course.
And then
Hey, Pepe, Andrew, Matthew.
Andrew, So Andrew, we met on Clubhouse. I think it was just this past Wednesday, but I really wanted Andrew and Matt to meet each other because you're both you have a lot of similarities. You both seem to be really genuine people. And Andrew was in our room on Wednesday, the Control Camp room, just talking about um, his film scoring and a movie scoring experience, kind of his process. But then he also told the story of how he got Ava DuVernay's attention and became the composer for her new show, and all that happened here, her new movie or series. It's a series. All that happened here on Clubhouse, and so I thought it would be cool for him to come and also share. How you doing, Andrew?
I'm good. I had a bit of a late night last night, so I'm just getting up and getting my coffee. There's a film composer here. Well, there are tons of film composers here in LA, but one named Nathan Barr invited a bunch of composers and people over to his recording studio a bunch of years ago. He bought he saw that the iconic Wurlitzer organ at 20th Century Fox, like one of the last scoring stage actual pipe organs in existence, was being dismantled and for sale. And he bought it and built a new recording studio housed around the organ. And he had a bunch of composers over last night with our partners and spouses and friends. And we watched a Buster Keaton movie with an organist from Ohio playing the Wurlitzer live to picture like they did back in the silent era. And then he brought us all up like in small groups into the chamber where all the pipes are, and there's percussion and there's mallets, like there's, on the Wurlitzer you can play the marimba, and glockenspiel, and there's bell trees and whistles and sirens, and it was just it was just such a magical, joy-filled night, and we just stayed late watching all the pieces work and move, and it was cool. But that's why I'm just getting my coffee now at 10:20 in the morning.
No worries. That
But
sounds
but I'm so
amazing.
glad to be here.
That,
Yeah,
that
it was it. There are not many. You go to like my dad's a pastor in Virginia, and they have an organ there. Of course, many churches do. Um, and it's really just speakers. It's an electronic organ now. We've, as a society, kind of like gotten rid of the pipe organs. Take a lot of maintenance, and it's so
Mm-hmm.
much easier just to get an electric organ with really nice speakers, and it sounds great. So there are very few actual true pipe organs that push air through pipes to make sounds and make this massive sound. But when you have the experience to be in a room with a pipe organ, you're in the instrument. The room that the pipe organ exists in is like the acoustic. It's like that the resonator of an acoustic guitar, and like you're sitting in that resonating. The room is part of the instrument, so you just feel it in your chest. It's like going to a movie theater or something, but you're inside an instrument. It's cool. It's a cool experience.
I love that description. Yeah, I've been in a couple of churches in my life that have had pipe organs with the pipes, actually installed in the walls, and it's amazing to see and feel. But I love the resonator description you just gave of that. It's really it's really special to experience it. So yeah, so I'm glad you're all here and in the room. So the way we've been doing this, we've kind of been going um, through Matt's filmography because I like to pull out the stories behind each of those, and I think each of those stories sparks its own cool conversation. But if you're on the stage, feel free jump in, interject, ask questions. I mean, this is a very casual convo, and I think for the benefit of the room, just to kind of show some insight both into the film, TV scoring world, and how we all kind of navigate our relationships. So Matt, when we talked last week, we've been going through this filmography, and then going to the conversations for weeks now. We're up to like 2017. I think we stopped with the short film that you did, The Outsider. And so what I'm doing is
Yeah.
I'm kind of just going through imdb.com. I have your filmography up on here. It's many pages, and then I'm kind of just kind of going chronologically. And so we talked about that short last time. I see another short right after it called Schooling Life, which is a short comedy. It's just like 35 minutes. Jasmine Burke is the director. Um,
Yeah. Um, yeah, I went to school with Jasmine. Jasmine and I, she actually graduated high school with my wife. So she's an actress here in Atlanta. She's done tons of stuff, a lot of movies. She's done everything. And she's started to lean into directing and producing her own work as well. And one thing about all these shorts, and maybe Andrew can chime in as well, as far as composing wise. Like I do shorts for several reasons. Shorts are very cool kind of filler projects. A lot of times shorts don't come with a lot of money. So it's really one of those things where like it's just it kind of keeps my chops up. And I like doing shorts because at first it starts off, it gives us new relationships, starts new relationships with people and directors and production companies because those shorts end up turning into more shorts and then end up turning into more opportunities in films and all that kind of thing. So I love working on shorts. They're not very time consuming, but it's really cool relationship builders. And it's also a cool, fun time to be creative. Working on television series, you kind of, and and even like these big movies or these big projects, you got to kind of succumb to what they need, so to speak. You can be creative as much as you can, but if you want, but P Valley already has its sound, so I have to kind of go by the sound and the tone that we've kind of created for the show for season two, and vice and on and on. But these short films allow me to kind of play with new stuff, do new things and experiment musically. So these shorts are very cool projects to kind of allow. I don't have a lot of comedy stuff, and so when Jasmine was doing this, she was like, "Hey, I'm doing a comedy." It allowed me to kind of dive into that a little bit more because most of my stuff is dramatic or um, more those tones and vibes. So um, this was my first, well, one of the first times I kind of can just do some really cool short comedy stuff. And then also she's my friend. She lives in Atlanta, so I can, my wife and her are good friends, and And it was fun to work with her on that project. But yeah, shorts are like one of those things where it's something cool to kind of keep your chops going, and they always come in right on time in between projects. I'm actually doing a short in January after the holidays. Is a good friend of mine, and she's out in LA, and she said I'm doing a short film, 15-minute comedy spoof. Are you available? I'm like, yeah. And, a couple weeks out of my time, and um and she makes good stuff, and the script is cool, and and they understand my schedule, and vice versa. So shorts are very, 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 very good to get into. I tell a lot of composers, you know, do shorts. I mean, they're fun, and it allows you to kind of create cues and see what happens.
Yes, your whole I mean the cool thing about that, I mean your whole from 2000 and I don't know what it was 6, 2007 up till, 2015, 16, it's almost mostly shorts in there. Like you use that to learn to build relationships. Like that was your training ground. That was your relationship builder. We've talked about how you would respond to people on Twitter who were like, "Hey, I need a film composer," and you'd be like, "Hey, I compose films," and just jumping in and
Yeah,
taking whatever whatever was out there, like really, really aggressively using that social network to build your filmography.
yeah. And like shorts. Like I said, it's just connecting and networking and one thing about is to gain trust for with the director and productions. I'm here in Atlanta, so the thing about me being in Atlanta, I'm not in LA. I'm not around at the time. Earlier at the time of my career, I wasn't around all the producers and directors. And this is before Atlanta was being used to shoot things, but it wasn't being used to do any kind of production. They just come here and shoot and fly away. And now, offices and some post offices are starting to open up here, and production offices are starting to come open up here a little bit easier. So it's just a lot like shorts allowed me just to make that simple connection, and to gain a little bit of trust, and also for me to just practice and work. And hopefully, that will lead to other opportunities. I mean, everything is a gamble. We're just trying to throw stuff out the wall and see if it sticks. And if it doesn't stick, if the relationship doesn't pan out, I have some really cool cues to put in my library. And when someone asks for a comedy cue, I can pull it. But that's really what it was, and I still do. I mean, I try not to turn down anything that comes my way because I'm just grateful for the opportunity. But I'm still open up to like, yo, let's, if it's a short and I think it's cool and it's something I've never done before, or, or, some, relationship I want to, kind of keep moving forward with, I definitely do them. I have turned down some shorts, to be honest with you, on some things because of my schedule. But like I said, they always kind of come in on time sometimes, like when it's like, when in between those moments where I'm not making music or the project, I'm waiting on a project to happen to start, or we're still negotiating some things. Things happen. So a short is always good to kind of just keep those wheels and creative vibes going. So
I see Pepe's mic unmuted. You want to jump in, Pepe? Oh, maybe not. Pepe, you there? Oh, she might just be unmuted. All right. So yeah, you're.
Well,
Oh,
Matthew, I love what you said about shorts. I feel the same way about like they're. I see them as investments in other people and other creatives and directors. Like a lot, like you said, we're trying to meet people, and we a good place to do that is on a short film. It's like us investing our time in their creative journey, hoping that they love working with us and want to work with us again when they get their first feature or they get that TV pilot. It's good to hear somebody else kind of echo how I feel about short films.
yeah,
Yeah, so I just wanted to kind of jump on that and say that.
yeah, I know some composers that don't do shorts. They just feel like it just not a waste of time, but more so I don't know if they have time, but I'm always like, when it comes to short films, you know, I I let them know what I'll send. If I'm busy, if I have some things going on, I'm a dad and a husband, I got things going on. I try to, I'll be honest with them about things. I don't just say, yeah, I got you, and then try to figure it out. But um, I literally, we have spotting sections, and the cool thing about it too, with these shorts, sometimes the directors don't know how to work with the composer on some things, and I think that's one of the biggest things that as composers we have to help, not help directors, but teach them how to talk to us musically, or teach them how to communicate with us musically, to kind of crack the code in their head. And the short films are literally a great practice for me, and for them, and it's a great networking tool because most short film directors in that they either come out of college, or they're in between some things, or they're just trying to figure some things out, and we have really good conversation of spotting and cues and musical terms, and vice versa, and it helps me how to speak to those directors and speak to that production company. And so it's just like I said, it's the perfect scale, perfect word. It's truly an investment into the process, and I respect them so much. And like I said,
And
they
like I said,
always
they
come
always
right on
come right
time
on time.
when things are in between time.
Do you? I feel like I feel the same way sometimes, where I'm not like necessarily teaching, but so many times on short films, directors will say like, "I've never worked with a composer," or "I don't know," and they're nervous about it. So it's like you said, it's not quite teaching them, but it's like being their first experience and being like a comfortable place for them to learn how to work with a composer. And
Yeah,
I found out in I think it was when I read Richard Belise's book, The Emerging Film Composer, like back in like 2011, or I can't remember when I read it, but I still have it on my shelf. It's such a great book for anyone in the audience who's a composer and just starting out. Buy that book on Amazon and read it. He was saying that part of why that is that of all the things they teach in film school to film directors, like working with the sound person, set etiquette, things like that, like delegation of duties and who's in charge of lenses, and all like they teach all this stuff, and there's rarely even a class on like music and film, like appreciation, if even
yes,
that, barely. And
yes,
so they're coming in, and it's a huge part of filmmaking is music, and they don't know how to. They're not trained coming out of film school how to speak and communicate and work with a composer, which blows my mind. But it also makes me very like understanding of when somebody comes in and they're like nervous. It's like, okay, I get it. Hey, let's figure it out. How do you want to
yeah,
talk to me? Like, how do you want to communicate? Let's find your style of communication.
yeah. I'm actually in the middle of that right now. I'm working on I'm scoring a documentary. I've been scoring a documentary about 3 months now. It's a very, 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 very good documentary. But this documentary, director and the production company always used library music, and so everything was library music driven. And so the network that this it's going to be on wanted a composer, and so through my agency and all that kind of good stuff, I got the job, and I'm like, great. And the first thing they said was, we used to work in my libraries. I'm like, okay. And that just put me in the mind of understanding, like you said, of like, okay, we have to start a communication conversation to make sure that we are on the same page, because that's a composer in their head. Because like you said, no one teaches them how to speak to, or just, I mean, just relay the message of what they're looking for, of what production company director looking for. And so we have to have the conversation of, okay, what are we looking for? What are we trying to do? And, you know, being a nice guy is literally the name of the game, and understanding that they're just trying to make their film and they want the best for their film, and it's our job to service that and try to get that, and musically put our ego aside and say, okay, whatever you want us to do, we can figure it out. I told them the exact words was, I'm a composer. I can make any kind of music you want. Just let me know what you want, and then here's my expertise. This is what I feel. What you feel. I'm an open book. I tell people I don't marry. I never. I don't. I'm not married to my music. I'm married to the project. So there's always a delete button, and there's always a put it to the side button, and I'm okay with that. If it's five versions of something, it's five versions of something. But I think that that conversation needs to be held very early, so the trust and the comfortableness is there, and so they can open up and not settle, because I don't want anyone settling, but also want to make sure that I'm servicing the show or servicing the documentary. So yes, though I'm definitely going through that right now of someone working with nothing but library music, and just editing to library music, and they're and the film looks a certain way. It's a documentary, so it just comes off a certain way. But the network was very big on having some original music, some original stuff written to it, and kind of moderning it up a little bit. And the opportunity came, and so yeah, so it's funny that you I'm dealing with that right now as we speak. Looking at an email right now, so it's one of those things where it's part of our jobs, man, and I try not to, you know, um, I just that's just what it is. I think this thing is, as a composer, that's what you have to deal with because
Interesting
they're
because a lot of times I think this is across sync, no matter, whether but it's more so you can see it, and as you hear, like, Matt, you hear Andrew, you hear you guys talk about the music creation process for a film. But I think across sync, a lot of times as creators, we just think about the placement. Like internally, you ask people what their goal is. I just want to get a song on a film, or I want to get a song in a movie, or I want to get a song, I want to score a film. But we're thinking about the product and the film as the end product. But then as I talk to hear you talk, I hear Andrew talking, so much more than that, you're actually talking about a collaboration between a musician and another creator. And it doesn't matter whether it's music for an advertisement or music for, it's going to go on a TV show. Even if you're working through a third party like a library, ultimately, you know, at some level, we are putting our creativity with another creator, and that requires communication. That requires it's ultimately a relationship business. And no matter what level we are, if we've studied music, if we've worked in our craft, almost it, there's almost all of us are lacking any type of formal education in how to like build these relationships, because there's nothing in our career path or our education path that said, hey, as you're learning all these things, the ultimate thing on top of all this that's going to make this work for you is learning to service somebody else, or learning to serve somebody else, whether you're serving them by educating them or whether you're serving them by just communicating with them. And like, I feel like, hearing you guys talk, I feel like there's something that we've all had to learn ourselves.
yeah. I remember my first working on Greenleaf, and this was like my first ever like major like Lionsgate production. Like, okay, this is the big dogs. These are this is big. And I wasn't composing; I was music producing. Nate Barr was composing, and the composer for the show, and who was an excellent composer, like one of my favorites. He's amazing. But anyway, I'm the music producer, and I'll never forget, Eric. I don't know if you know the story, but um, this is my first time working on this show ever, and so we got the music. I got the first round of notes. We had a meeting with Nate Barr, myself, music supervisor at the time, and the showrunner and the director of the show, and like a couple producers, and we just all had this. They were Nate was on a call, but we were all in the meeting in the room, and they gave us the songs these are the songs for the scenes, and we need these songs recorded, produced, and all that kind of stuff. Like, great. So I go home and literally, mock up get up my computer, and I make the whole entire track from A to Z. Like, it's a big gospel record. I did everything, all the music, and I send it off. I was really proud of it. Like, here's my first, attempt of this beautiful big gospel song, and we're going to make it happen. I'm going to record it tomorrow. And I get a call from the creators, and they're like, great, sounds good. And then I get a call from the vice president of music of Lionsgate, the one that hired me. He sends me a text message, hey, are you available for a quick call? I'm like, yes. So I'm thinking he's going to call me to be like, hey, this is a great, thank you so much. You're awesome. And he calls me and says, hey, we got your track. I said, yeah, what do you think? What do you think? He was like, it sounds like it was made in a computer. And I was like, well, yeah, but I used some good. He said, your instruments sound great. He said, but it doesn't have any feel. It doesn't have any soul. And I was like, what you mean? He was like, well, it sounds great. He's like, but we're not looking for that. And the words that he used right after that was, I need you to service the show. He said, we're putting a lot of money in this show, and we want to hear and feel and see every dollar we put in there. He said, we need the soul that we're putting into it. And I was like, and this is way before. This is before. I mean, because before then, I was used to working on my own, like as a composer. We're, working on these films and these shorts and these indie films. We're in our own. We're in our basement or our houses, or in a studio room, or in a bedroom, or in a closet, making our own music by ourselves with ourselves. So, and then we may hire, depending on the budget, we may hire someone to do something. But nine times out of 10 on these short indies, either we're doing it ourselves or it's going to be done in the computer. And so I was like, I'm doing everything myself. I got a piano and an organ. I'm doing everything myself. And when he said it to me, I was like, okay, I need to use every piece of budget they've given me and allow me to work with. So I said, well, all right, if that's the case, then I need this, 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 this. And he was like, you got it. And then that's when the doors opened up of like, wow, my job is just not me sitting in a room making music. I have to work with people. I have to collab with people. And the key word to me was service the show, and we need some soul. Well, it needs more than one person's soul in there. And it needs, I need an organ player. I need a piano player, even though I play piano, but let me go find that guy that plays piano in the church every Wednesday and Sunday. Let me go find that organist. Let me go find that gospel singer that sings every Wednesday and Sunday. Let me go find that songwriter that write these beautiful gospel songs. Let me go find the studio that can service and house it, and we all can do it in one room at one time instead of just piecing it together or tracking it at each time. I want to do it all in one room. Let's all do it all together. And we did that, Eric. Eric was part of it. We did all that, and the music came out great. And so, just like you said earlier, it's all about collaboration. Like you literally have to put your ego aside and say, "Hey, it's not about me. It's not about how great I am or how good my programs are, my VSTs are, or how good I know how to edit and mix. I need everything and everyone involved." And so look at it, servicing the show. That I always keep that in the front of my brain. Even when me as a composer, I know Andrew probably goes through it sometimes too. Like we kind of get in our own way as an ego because we're working on these projects and like we know what we're doing. Like this cue feels right. This cue's good. But I have to remind myself to service the show and say, let's continue to be that team player and be that comfortable, that comfort, that trust that they need to provide music because that's why they hired you and that's why we're here. So yeah, we all have to kind of just put ego, like just imagine it's like working in the kitchen. We all have to be on the same page to make this one meal. If I'm doing the fries, let me do the fries, and you're doing the side, you're doing something else. We all got to be on one page because we all have to
I
work
like
together to get the
the
project
ego
done.
thing, what you just said, because, um, I mean, you could have gone with the desire or attitude like you came to me. I've been doing shorts for all these years and you found me, you heard about me, so you know that this is my style of sound. So if now you're hearing my style of sound and saying that that's not working, then like you could have went a whole different direction, um, um, from a place of ego because they did come to you and you had been building your own track record to that point. So to stop and pivot and be like, okay, wait a minute, what is it that you need, and then how do I get you what you need? I think is a, I think there's a lot of like emotional maturity in that, and just wisdom in that approach.
Yeah, it's all that. I mean, that's just the industry that we're in. And that's why I kind of backed out of the music industry side of things because it was the complete opposite. It was hard to work with people and hard to be a team player because it was so ego driven, and because you're dealing with certain music producers or certain people involved or certain artists involved had the ego. They have to sell themselves a little bit differently on a TV series or a television film or even an independent film. You're working with 20 people, 30 people, 50 people. I mean, on P Valley, it's 80 people involved. I mean, in one episode, it's from actors to extras to the post team, to the production team, to the creatives. I mean, it's so many people involved in all these meetings and they all have to say so. We all have to trust each other and be able to understand the no's don't mean no, they mean not yet. You know what I'm saying? Or the yeses could be maybes. You know what I'm saying? We have to just learn though that lingo and understand that, this is not about you. This is about this story that we're telling. This is about this creative, input that we all want to, put out. So it's not just about just because you feel like the cue works or the song works or your style works doesn't mean it works. Um, And we say my show, but it's not my show. It's our show. It's what do we feel? Take ownership of your piece of it and really give it your best. And that's what I learned, and I learned that each day. I mean, each show I work on, because the more we work on these shows and or these films, or more successful we get, and we have different conversations, your ego automatically kind of goes up, and you feel like you made it. And but I always remind myself and humble myself every time I sit down at my desk and say, okay, cool. I'm thankful to be here. I'm grateful to be here. Let's see what happens. That's why I still do shorts, because I want to still have that that connection to 5 years ago. Hell, 3 years ago, I was still, 2 years ago. You just never know. You know what I'm saying? And composers, this film industry is so fickle. I may not get another job in 6 months. A show might get canceled that I'm a part of, or things happen. The pandemic happened last year. Things stopped for a lot of composers that I know. And so it's just one of those things where just staying humble and understanding the servicing the show is way more important than servicing your ego. If that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. It makes perfect sense. And I think I've heard, I think a lot of times when somebody makes the transition from the music industry, whether they're a producer or a DJ or a singer songwriter, like a guitarist or something, and they have always been interested in scoring films. I think it's a whiplash for those people. I've heard that before, where because they're used to being an artist, where they write a song, express themselves as they see fit, as they feel is right, and then put that music out into the world for their listeners and fans and people who enjoy their music. Um, the film industry is a working in music in film is a totally different animal, and we it's a totally different process. It's totally different. It's totally different in the way that, like, I see, and I'm not the only one. I think this is even Jerry Goldsmith that I heard this secondhand from. Somebody told me this story from him about him, I think, but don't quote me on that because I never looked it up. But film composers really are craftsmen, craftswomen, and not necessarily artists. Though there is art in the craft that we do, we're still servicing, like you said, a project of film, almost like a carpenter who's
Yeah,
hired to come into someone's house and build a bookshelf in their study. You go in, and the person obviously hired you because of your incredible skill and art and the detail that you put in your work. But when you walk and you show up in their house and they say, okay, well, I want the bookshelf built on this wall so that then when the sun comes through the windows, it doesn't damage my old vintage books so that the sun's
hmm
not on the books. And I really think I would like a mahogany wood and a natural finish so that I can really see the grain in the wood. But everything else, I mean, I hired you because of all the ornate details that you carve into the wood, and I want that detail. But they gave you specific parameters, so if you go in and you're looking at the room and you're like, well, that wall is wrong. I think the bookshelf needs to be on this wall instead.
yeah,
And I know he said mahogany, but I'm really feeling birch. This room it says birch to me. And then they come like weeks after you're done and they go, "What's the deal, man? You,
yeah,
you."
yeah,
I said this wall in mahogany. I asked for mahogany. I gave you all this creative freedom. I hired you because I love your innate ability to carve and craft things that are beautiful and unique. But you didn't do the things I said. You can't say, "Oh, well, I'm right that it should be on this wall, and you're wrong that you wanted mahogany." That's not the job of a craftsperson. That's an artist
yeah.
making choices for themselves. So I think about that a lot, and it keeps my ego in check. I think you and I are a lot similar in that way that how we think of our craft and our job servicing a film. There's so much room for creativity, but it's still servicing something else.
Yeah, it's funny. I mean, I know you probably can relate, Eric. I can if I show you the notes I receive from directors on these cues I send off, thinking that I'm good and it's great, and these notes they come back with nah, that's not it. And they give us full details of what they didn't like. It's like, yo, what do you like? And, and it's literally cracking the code. And it's exactly what Andrew says. Like, we have to um, put that ego way far away and literally give them what they want musically. Um, and a lot of times they don't know how to communicate that very well because they're not musical people. It's their directors and producers, and they just know what they want to hear. And so it's the exact same thing of the crafting of being a carpenter. It's literally um, what we do every day. I had some landscaping done around my house, and the first thing I tell the guy was, "Hey man, do your thing. Like I don't know what to do. I don't have a green thumb." So he started putting these ideas together on paper, and my wife walks out and said, "No, that's not what I want." And literally was specific of what she wanted at certain things at certain times. And the guy looked at me like, "Hey, I get it," and I felt like, oh. I related with him so quickly because if I say do your thing, I didn't know what he was doing. He was just doing his thing creatively in his head of what he wants the yard to look like, but it's not his yard. It's our yard. And he doesn't live here. We live here. So um, I relate that a lot to what we do in the film industry. Like we have to understand as composers that we have to service the scene. And, I remember I working on Boomerang and we had um, I did this cue. I mean, they sent me this description of the cue, what they wanted, and I read the script. And after I read the script, I was like, yo, this is what I'm going to do. We had a good spotting session, and I literally gave them this beautiful cue with pianos. And I hired, I kind of jumped the gun and hired uh, a small quartet. I said, this is going to work. They're going to love it. And this is the first time in this episode, in this series, that we can actually do some different stuff. It was like a different kind of montage episode. And I was like, yo, we can really do something different from what we've been dealing with. This is episode 10. This is the last episode. We're going to end on the bang. So I grabbed this quartet and I uh, did this beautiful arrangement. And we're like, all right, we're great. And I send the cue off and I got thumbs up on everything. Everybody like, oh, it sounds great. It sounds amazing. Good job. So I'm like, cool. Cues written off, got it mixed, everything finalized, sent off to the stages, the dub stages in LA. I'm here in Atlanta. And my music editor calls me back with like, he texts me throughout the whole mixing stage, and he's like, "That one cue that you did," I'm like, "Yeah, yeah, I'm excited about it." He's like, "They took everything out of the cue and just kept the piano and the drum and the quartet, the arrangement, all the things that I'd written." They took all out. Like the producers on stage, as they were dubbing it, they was like, "Yeah, let's kill those strings. It's too dramatic." And it was just, and they just dissect my and he sends me back what they did. And it was literally a few piano lines and a drone that I created, and they just played it throughout the rest of the scene. And I was like, oh, okay. And that was another ego check of me, like, all right. It worked very well for the scene. It did great. It serviced the scene, and it was awesome. But so like I said, you got to learn that you got to really learn how to do that as far as on the film side. And it's very different when artists come in from the music production side. Music industry side of like, hey, this is what I do, and understand like, nah, bro, this is what we have to do. It's not as it's not your world. This is our world, so we all have to live in it together.
Yeah, and I will say, when if there's some composers listening, when that happens to you, don't make a big stink about it, because then those people might not hire time.
Oh yeah,
You might get your, it might feel good to say like, you took it out of my music, and I know of course you didn't do this. I'm just saying this for somebody listening. Like,
yeah.
just be like, okay, hey, that works great too. I love it. Can't wait to work with you next time.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
cool. My comes like, okay, great, awesome. But yeah, that's the biggest thing we have to learn. Like, yeah. But that was my first time ever experiencing that, and I was like, wow. And the dub stage is I told Eric a long time ago when we first met. I said, do not fall in love until you actually see it on TV. Like, you need to see it. I don't care if the check clear. I
Yeah.
don't care if you got the credit. I don't care if your IMDb page updated. You don't say nothing till you actually see it on your TV. uh, because there's a lot of edits I have that did not come across on TV. So things change at the last second, the last minute, the last hour. Um, when it comes to this, when it comes to
I
film
did
and
a
television.
TikTok
So
about that,
um,
Matt, about
yeah,
um, jumping too quick and the disappointment when you tell everybody to watch because you're going to be on TV and then it's not there.
yeah, and that's why I'm even hesitant about talking about Queens and P Valley and all that kind of stuff because it's not done. Nothing's done. Um, those shows are as great as they are. Nothing's done. Things happen. Um, Creators change their minds. I mean, Andrew can definitely can take for this. Like, I've seen showrunners get fired on shows. They get let go. Producers get let go. Networks change. Networks cancel. There's how many pilots we do and thinking that we got the show and all of a sudden we don't. Composers get fired. I didn't get picked up on the second season of Boomerang. In my head, I was the guy, and then the second season of Boomerang came around and I didn't get it. They went with someone else with no explanation. Or the explanation was very, we're comfortable with this person here in LA or you're in Atlanta or this person, saw the vision better. I mean, things happen. So you never really jump the gun so much because this industry is, like I said, so fickle and there's so many people involved and there's so many minds involved. Things change, things happen. Um, so you got to kind of be prepared for that. In your own creative space and in your own head. Though you may submit 5 songs, they may not take one, or you get hired to to compose the job, compose the score, and you know, I sometimes on certain shows there's only 2 cues on the whole score. Um, you got an hour long episode, and sometimes they take cues out and like, hey, there's no music here. We're gonna do this instead. Or they'll use some more. They do sound design and use source music. So it's a lot that goes on, and like I said, and checks get cleared, and contracts get signed, and IMDb credit goes up. But at the end of the day, it's like until you actually see it on the scene, on the television, and that's when you can start pointing and say, hey, this is what I did. Queens came out last week, but um, I don't know what episode 2 gonna look like. I hope I know because we did some stuff, but we don't know. We don't know until we see it on on
We'll see.
Tuesday at 10 o'clock.
Let
You
me
just never
just
know.
do a quick reset of the room. We've been here an hour so far. Really cool discussion. This is our control camp film score convos. This is the new room that we're doing on Sundays with Matthew Head, who has a great filmography, an award-winning composer. We're thankful to have Andrew Scott Bell on stage with us also today. And we use this time to just dive into the process of film scoring, the business of film scoring, the business of building relationships, all the things that have kind of led these composers to getting the relationships and the films and the credits that they have, and kind of just getting into their mindset and how they work. So much insight there. So if you're enjoying this, 2 things you can do that can help the room out. One is to ping other people. So hit that plus sign on your phone and just let people know this room is going on. And then the other is the new highlight feature that is on Clubhouse. It looks like a pair of scissors on the bottom of the app. If you hear a good quote or a good gem or something, you can hit the scissors at that point and it'll create a kind of a graphic clip for you of the last 30 seconds. So if anybody grabs any cool clips or hears a cool thing, you could always DM it to me. I like to keep a collection of these, and we'll post them on our social media or post it on your social media to help spread the word. Hand raising is up. So even as we're talking, we're just kind of talking casually. If you do have a question about something that's being said or a question for Matt or Andrew, feel free. You can raise your hand and then we'll can pull people up and answer questions as we're talking. But as we're jumping back into this, Andrew, let me divert since you're here, and I also think Matt would appreciate this. You told the story. You set it up. You were worried because you thought it was a long story, but it's a really good one. Would you mind sharing again just how so Ava DuVernay found you here on Clubhouse. She hired you off of Clubhouse. I think that's the first time I've heard of a filmmaker officially coming to Clubhouse and saying, I'm going to find me a composer, and there's like thousands of people in the room, and you end up getting the gig. But as you were talking in our room, I was clear that, some of the things that you did were not just, oh, let me play the best music. I'm sure your music is amazing, but it was also something about your mindset and your own hustle, which is why I thought you and Matt would get along cool, because you both seem to have that creative imagination in terms of how do I build relationships. So would you mind sharing that story?
Oh, I love this. I love hearing this story. It's a wild story. Still kind of in awe about it. But yeah, thank you. In late July, I can't remember what I was working on. I think I was working on the queer horror documentary for Shudder, which has been put on kind of a pause. But at the time, I was scoring the episodes, and so I was like, it was crazy amount of work. It was like, as is normal for TV stuff, you have like 4 days to do a whole hour long episode of TV, and you got to score it all, and there's no shortcuts. You just got to work. It's just the work you got to do. So I was really busy, and I wasn't much on Clubhouse. But I got this ping while I was working on my phone. Some pings still get through, I think, even though I have the whatever settings. But I got this ping that was like, and I looked at it and it said, somebody invited me to this room called, I may hire a composer on Clubhouse tonight. We'll see. And I was like, what is this? Like what's going on here? Is this like an indie horror film? Like, who's hiring composers on Clubhouse? It's probably just like a short film or something. But for me personally, I never pass by a door without knocking and see if it opens and see what's behind it. I always just kind of like, hey, see someone post about a film. I think, Matthew, I heard you say the same thing. It's, hey, I'm a composer. Let's talk. I want to hear more about your project, because you literally never know what's behind a door unless you knock on it. So I was like, okay, let me probably due for a break anyways. I've been working pretty hard today. So I took a break and I went in the room, and it was Ava DuVernay. It just blew my mind. And it was just her as a moderator, and I think a couple of other people, just like 3 people as moderators, and then like dozens of people on stage, and then hundreds of people listening. And I was like, wow, this is this is not some indie. This is crazy. So I raised my hand. Ava was up there on the stage, of course, and she was interviewing each composer for like 1 to 2 minutes tops. It was just a quick, like, tell me a little bit about yourself and send me links to your music. And at that point, the back channel, messaging side of Clubhouse had just come out. So it was new to me. I was like, oh, look at this. This little paper airplane. It's back channel messaging. Um, so she was just interviewing everyone for like 2 minutes. It was my turn. I can't remember exactly what we talked about, but she asked me about the queer horror documentary because it was listed in my bio. We talked a little bit about like how excited I was about the project and how it's going to kind of shake things up in the industry because of some of the revelations, like Mary Shelley being polyamorous, possibly bisexual. They don't know if it's bi or pansexual. But we it was very brief, and I kind of just mentioned that I'm doing a lot of horror films, but I don't want to do only horror for the rest of my life, even though I love horror. It's not the only thing that drives my passions for film and music. And it was just a nice, quick, like, about me and she thanked me, and I immediately, when my turn was over, went over to the back channel and sent her a link to my website and a link to a Dropbox link for a cue from a Christmas movie that actually comes out in November this year. So that was something recent that's not on my website that I wanted her to hear. And that was it. I was done with my interview, and I just sat back and thought, I'm going to listen to everyone else because I can always learn from other composers and how they speak about themselves or how they speak about their process. I can always learn. So I'm not just going to leave the room. I'm going to sit in and enjoy and take a break. And about maybe like 10 composers later, after interviewing maybe like, 6, 7, 8, 10 or something more, Ava chimed in and said, "Hey, I just want you all to know that out of all the people I've interviewed so far, Andrew's the only person that has sent me links, followed up with links to his work," which blew my mind. I could not believe that that was the case. That as soon as you're done with interviewing with somebody, anybody, I send them a link. As soon as I'm done talking with somebody and they asked for my links, I send them a link instantly. It's like the next thing I do. So that blew my mind. I couldn't believe that. And I'm sure she got dozens of links almost immediately after saying that. So I kept listening in the room. I was enjoying it. I was liking the way that she was speaking with people and giving everyone a chance to speak and just listening and trying to soak in people's energy and who they are and get a feel for what they're about and what type of person they might be like to work with, but doing all of that just by listening. I could get a real sense that she was just like meeting people, right? Like really meeting people. And I thought that was really kind. So I was enjoying the room and listening. And then eventually a guy named Trey Alexander, who goes by Trey Ace, came up on stage, and he's a music supervisor. And he said, "I'm not a composer, but maybe you need a music supervisor on this show." And Ava very kindly said, "Oh no, we're hiring a composer tonight. Um, don't need a music supervisor." And at that point, there was like close to 1,000, if not over 1,000 people just listening to the room. And I think knowing and being who Ava is, she realized and knew that a lot of those people don't work in film and TV. And they may not know the difference between a music supervisor and a composer. So she took a pause from interviewing people and just took that moment to like teach and let everybody know the differences between a music supervisor and a composer. So she started to say, like, for all those in the room that aren't in the film industry, like a music supervisor finds and licenses existing tracks that we can add to the show. She used the example of a pop song that I think recently played on Queen Sugar, or maybe like the last season, because I don't think the new season had started yet. She was like, "Yeah, we might use a so-and-so song in Queen Sugar, and when you hear that song, you recognize it and you know it and you love it, and there's somebody singing, and that's what's called a placement." And then she started to describe what a composer does, which is, she said, like, a composer we hire to write original music specifically for the picture, to the scene, tailored to the things that happen in the scene. And she started to describe a scene, just kind of like, so let's say that a mother is looking out her window into the backyard and watching her daughter play in the yard. And the mother just had a recent cancer diagnosis, but she doesn't know how to share that terrible news with her daughter. And because she knows, she's just watching her, because she knows that once she shares that news, it'll change that daughter's life. So she's just watching her daughter play in that last moment of real innocence in her daughter's life before this news just alters her reality. And as she was describing the scene, I felt it, and I got chills, and I was like, "Oh my God!" Like, I could see it the way she was describing it so visually, and I could feel what I might write for a scene like that. So I unmuted my mic and I started to play the piano. Without even really thinking, like, this might not be a good idea. This might she might think that this is rude. I just instinctively started to score her description of the scene, and she loved it. And she was like, "Somebody scoring the scene like right now?" And she was like, "Okay, Andrew." Like, she saw that it was me that was unmuted, and she was like, "Okay, Andrew, noted, noted." And I was like, "Oh my God, maybe that was bad. Maybe that was good. I don't know. I don't know." Um, and then the room kind of, kept going, and the room ended, and I was like, "Well, that was a cool experience." I even told my partner, I was like, "That was a cool experience. Like, I probably, like, nothing will probably happen, but Um, that was cool. That was amazing. Like, wow, I can't believe stuff like that is happening on Clubhouse, even still. This was July, late July, like almost August. I feel like the app at that point was starting to kind of be less active. I know that I personally was less active, and I feel like it was, in its heyday, was really, really popping during the pandemic. But by July, August, September, it's starting to get a little bit less engagement. So I was like, man, I just can't believe stuff like that's going to happen. That's so incredible. It's so amazing. And that was a Friday night, and by Wednesday, I got an email from one of the other producers on the show, Megan, and it was, we'd like to set up a call with you, and are you available? And I was like, yeah, let's have the call. And so that call was on a Wednesday, and they offered me the job on the following day, on Thursday, so like less than a week later. And it's just an incredible. It's it's still incredible. I'm still working on the show now, today, yesterday. There are 2 episodes of the show that are already out on TV. They are out on Fridays at 8 p.m. on NBC. It's called Home Sweet Home, and I think Ava's not only brilliant and just like a joy to work with, she's incredibly compassionate and kind, and then all of that kindness trickles down from the top of her company, her and Paul in Array, and just kind of like trickles down to every single person. So it's been a joy to work on the show. It's been beyond my expectations of just everybody being just on board for everything, working hard, and not letting the stress turn each other into being rude or mean. We're all just like making this joy-filled show about families learning each other's differences and similarities, and it's a really
That is
fun and
so.
joyful
I'm
project.
still hearing the story again. It's just, it's amazing. I think it's what it just says about the initiative. And I said this on Wednesday when you aired it. Like, I consider myself like a take initiative type of person. I'm looking for opportunities, and if I can kind of raise my hand and say, "Hey, I can do something," or jump in, I'm pretty quick to do it. But I don't know that I'd be bold enough to unmute my mic while Avery DuVernay was talking and start playing the piano. I would second guess everything about that. I see Matt unmuted.
Oh well, I mean, amazing story. And I'm listening to it, and we all have those kind of similar stories. Of it just reminds me of what my mom would tell me. When I was a little boy, what's for you is for you. And Andrew, that was your job. Like it was, as you got the ping, you got the thought process to send out the email or send out the link to your website. God ordained, like that was going to happen. The universe already knew that was going to happen. And I think a lot of people don't get that in this life that we live, and even within this industry. And to me, that was supposed to happen. So when I hear those stories, hear your story, it's inspiring, but it's also comforting to know that um, those who are where they think they should be, you shouldn't worry, because it's going to happen. Like if people know my story, and by me hearing Andrew's story, it was just so innocent and so breath and so refreshing to know that this wasn't a guy that was forcing his way through the door. This was a guy that was passionate, that felt inspired by what he heard, did what he knew what to do. Um, he didn't send an email saying, "Put me on." He didn't send a DM saying, "Holler at me, I'm the one. I got the best music in the world." He just said what he felt, and he genuinely, his spirit came across his music and his decision making, and that got him the job. And I think that's really what happens. I mean, I have a very similar story with P Valley, how I got P Valley. I don't know if Eric, I don't know if you know that story, but it was, very similar. And it's just being in the room at the right time with the right energy and with the right mindset will get you the job, because Ava could have went to anyone, but she chose Andrew because that's what she felt. He was talented. It was everything was right. And I think that's what this industry is I hope people take these stories and these conversations as that instead of and I know I get a lot of emails and DMs and hey man, put me on, listen to my music. I'm like, I feel you. Let's talk about you though. Let's what's good with you? I always lead with my kids. I have two kids. I have a 9-year-old and a 5-year-old and a beautiful wife. I lead with that. I lead with, the house I grew up in is the house that I bought. I bought the house I grew up in, my childhood home. And my wife and I renovated my childhood home. And so my son's room is my old room. Like I say those things to directors and producers and they be like, wow, okay. And then I say, all right, I make music too. And that's the beautiful thing. So Andrew, your story was beautiful. It was refreshing, and it also just is it reminds me of that. What's for you is for you, and that's going to lead down to so many other opportunities with Ava and so many opportunities with other directors and producers. Like that story is amazing. So I hope people hear that more so than you got lucky. I just feel like, nah, you got that was your job before you even got the ping. It was already designed for you to score and meet Ava on that on that level. And I'm glad you did it the way you did it because that's how it's supposed to happen.
Yeah, thanks, man. Thank you for your kind words, man. That means a lot. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, that's supposed to happen. I mean, and that's, but other composers I talk to, like we all have those similar, like I was in the parking lot, stories where, I ran across this person at the grocery store. Like that's how it happens. I mean, Eric, I met you at a conference and it was just, I mean, just the most random things. And, it seems like the random things work better than the things that we were trained or taught to do,
Yeah, I would
you
that
know,
because I've my experiences with serendipity and opportunity that comes. I've been on the side where opportunity has come, and I personally can look back and say I screwed that up. I've had managers for big artists call me and say, "Hey, I need a song or I need this or what have you," and I did not because I early we're talking like 15 years ago now. In my career, I always put my hopes on like a song. I would try to make a song or a group of songs, or I try to make a mixtape or something, or one thing, and say, okay, I just need to show people what I can do. I'll make this thing and I'll start promoting and putting it out. And sometimes those things would lead back to me. Somebody would call me, but then when they called me, they didn't want the one thing that I made, and that thing might have taken me like 6 months to put together, whether it's a song or a mixtape or whatever. And I'm trying to like sell beats off of the CD, or I'm trying to pitch, songs to artists. And so somebody will hear this song from an artist, and then this manager will call me and say, "Oh, I love that song that you did. I got this artist in the studio. Send me some music." And I'm like, "I did you like that song? Do you want to sign that song? Because I'm pitching that song." And that's kind of where I was at the
hmm
time. I wasn't in a place of like, oh, they need something. How do I service them? And I was not skilled enough or fast enough to be able to pivot so quickly that I could switch what I was doing to what they needed. I had all my attention focused on like being good enough to do a particular thing, and then I wanted to get people to pay me for that thing that I had learned to do. I know how to make hip hop beats, or I know how to write cool R&B songs, and I got 3 or 4 really cool R&B songs. How do I get these songs signed? And I get those kind of DMs too from artists that are like, "Hey, I've got this great catalog, or I've got this cool album. How do I get these songs, placed in a film or placed in a movie?" And so when I realized I lost those opportunities because I couldn't pivot, I started to focus on getting more skilled and figuring out what I needed to know, or how do I get better. And then so like Matt, by the time I met you, we're sitting on the same panel at this conference. We're sitting right next to each other, having a real cool, just natural conversation. I'm not pitching music to you. We're just chatting. And then I think it was like a week later, you're like, "Hey, you write songs. I need a song for this." I was at a place where I could do a song in a day. I was not at that place when opportunities. I was not prepared for the opportunities that came for me earlier. So when I'm like, "Oh, Matt needs a song," and Matt's really, I know, I remember Matt saying he is fast, he works hard. people hit him for stuff and he turns it around in like 24 hours. I'm going to get this to him in 24 hours. And that was like, that was an intentional, you know, response. I wanted to, I didn't know what, I don't even think you told me the show. I didn't know what you was working on. I just knew that I liked your energy. You seemed to be involved in good stuff, and you just had a cool vibe. You seemed like the same way you talk about other people. You seemed like somebody with a good head that was on a cool path. And I was like, I want to do whatever I can to kind of, you know, contribute or however I can be of service. But I
Right.
was in a place where I could do that, and I've been in places before where I just didn't have the skills to do that. I had the desire, but not the skill to pivot. You know, and so I think that makes a difference too. Like for the opportunities that have come to you, you know, you've worked for the opportunities that have come to Andrew. Even that moment, you know, he had the even to be able to unmute your mic and to have the technical skill to play something that matched the emotion of what Ava was talking about on the stage. That is, the moment is serendipity, but the action is skill. And when skill can meet what God is bringing into your opportunities, I think that's, for me at least personally, that's where you have the opportunity for success.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah. I definitely agree. Yeah. All day. But I also want to pivot off of that of understanding what overthinking would do to your skill, because you wouldn't be in the room if you didn't think you had the skill. Um, and sometimes that's what happens. I mean, I lost a composer job literally, and I knew the words that I said that made me lose this job. My agent set me up an interview for a film in London, and it was the perfect film. Everybody, it was a series. Everybody knew, like, and I'm still kicking myself to this day about it. But the producers loved my music, the directors loved my music, and um, I got into their meeting, had a big Zoom meeting. This was the middle of COVID. This is last year, last summer, big meeting, and we were having a great conversation, just being myself, and um, the showrunner, the creator of the show, asked me a question, and and she related to black music. She said, because this is a black television show, and she literally kind of, made it a black si- situation. It's like, hey, by you being a black composer in Atlanta, what can you add to this this film here being shot in London, or this series being shot in London? What can you do? Um, and I just gave her the wrong answer. I gave her the musical, technical answer, and using all that, overthinking it, instead of just giving her my opinion and giving her the answer that I felt, that I wanted to say, but in my head I am in a situation of, I don't know these people and I don't know what's going on. This is through my agency, so I want to make sure I land it or do the right thing. And I shot myself in the foot. And I could tell as I was talking, I saw her face in the Zoom meeting kind of get disappointed because I said exactly what I shouldn't have said. And it wasn't a bad answer. It was literally a musical, composer answer. And she literally was like, "Thank you." And she ends up signing off. And then a couple of days later, my agent called me back. She was like, and literally the producer told my agent, and who told me, yo, they loved you, but they went with someone else that's a little less skilled than you, but understood what the series was about, or what he said the right answers. Um, very discouraging. But that was me overthinking and over processing the situation. And what Andrew did with his story, in my opinion, I just felt like he just kind of walked in and said, "Hey, I have nothing to lose. I'm gonna be me. I'm gonna give you myself." And that's the best part. I think that director, I'm sorry, the showrunner wanted to see my vulnerability. She wanted me to be vulnerable with her because, to be honest with you, she was black, I was black, and the whole staff was white. So she wanted to have a conversation with me, or have me relay a message back to her that we should have. I thought in my head I should have understood, but I went technical, business, corporate, musical composer guy, and it literally I saw it. So I say all that, Eric. You got the job for writing with me because you were cool, and, and I knew you were cool, and I knew that you can get it done in 24 hours. It didn't matter. You were cool. Like you were the guy that was cool, and you didn't press me, and it was it. I think that's how it works. And of course, your skill level has to rise. But I feel like sometimes your personality will help you rise to that occasion automatically because we all make music, and that's why you're in the room in the first place. You know what I'm saying? So I just feel like all that stuff happens, in time and in practicing of, I said, doing short films and just having fun and knowing that this is not a hustle but a hobby or something I'm passionate about doing, something I love to do. And then all of a sudden, good things will happen with just really good energy. So I'm real big on just having that energy, understanding the universe, understanding God around you, understanding all that to let it happen instead of trying to quote unquote make it happen. Because once you try to make it happen, it's you're force feeding something that's may not be your time yet.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what you're speaking about is really poignant, and it's that people want to hire composers who emotionally come to the table. We oftentimes can get in our heads, like you said, and give a very technical musical answer, but those the technical aspect of what we do, what reverbs, how we're thinking, or even like music theory when we were talking about, I want to use this for this kind of this chord change that leaves the cadence feeling empty, and that will, even if it's for the film and we're thinking we're making great musical points about the film, like they just want to hear us say, like, I want the score to feel empty as I felt when I read the script. How we do it isn't going to get us hired. It's that we understand emotionally and we're on the same page with them emotionally on the film, and that we're going to bring that, all of ourselves, to that project. That's what I hear when I heard your story, right? I mean, that's what it seems like.
Oh
Um,
yeah, definitely. Like
yeah.
yeah, I went straight technical. I don't remember what I said, but I know while I was saying it out loud, I was like, no, this is not it. Because I remember, look, she literally asked me a question of, what are you going to bring to this project musically? We have a black character, and it was a very dark series, dark. I read the pilot script, and I loved it. And so, initially, she wanted for me to respect the story, and be vulnerable to the story, to the script. And I didn't. I went technical. I went composer style, talking about, theory and arrangements and styles. And she was in tones. And she was like, okay, great, thanks. And I can just tell in her face that you're not it. And when I got the phone call from my agent a couple of days later saying, hey, they went with someone else, and basically explain why. And, I was like, wow, it just taught me a very valuable lesson to, it goes back to that conversation of ego, just understand what I'm doing, where I'm at. And what gets me hired on jobs is me. The music is a cherry on top. We all make music. We all have software and VSTs and programs, and we know musicians, and we all make, we can all do it. No one's music, in my opinion, no one's music better than anyone else's. I think we just all have our own styles and vibes. But with all that being said, I'm just very, I think you get hired because of you. Um, who you are as a person. What does your Instagram look like? What your website looks like? Your personality speaks. On my Instagram page is me and my family and a couple of projects I work on. That's what I like to talk about because I want people to see that I'm a family guy. I always talk about Atlanta, Georgia, because that's where I'm at. Um, I think that brings more to the table than the typical. I'm a composer. This is what I do. I live in LA and listen to my music. I'm the best in the world. You know, um, I think that's the genuine spirit of things. I think gets you hired because I want people to want to work with me because they like me. Not that I'm a talented musician. I think that comes in time. I think that comes as we're working. And that's why even working with Eric on these songs and Greenleaf, it was it was, to me, he's fun to work with. He's cool. I don't have to deal with an ego. I don't have to tell him everything. I can just say, hey, Eric, let's write a song tomorrow. And we write a song and we all get paid for it. And it goes, well, it's on a TV show. I'm like, great. And we move on to the next song. And it's hard to find that sometimes. And so if it's hard for me sometimes as a composer to find people, to connect with and work with, without the issues of egos, I want to make sure I come across the same way when I'm speaking with directors and producers and those things. That, hey, I'm just here to have work on this and service your situation. Let's see what happens.
I
But
love
yeah,
that.
that's really
It's
it.
funny how so much of what we talked about today, and we got like 30 more minutes, what we talked about today, it really boils a lot down to even when you're talking about what directors are asking for and then being able to kind of, hear what they're actually wanting and service them. Just this whole thing of kind of creatives communicating um, to one another, personalities, being genuine people, putting your I think what the word Andrew used. I think it was like just being that emotional vulnerability and putting yourself uh, out there fearlessly. So much about it's it. I think what resonates, um, and I think this is creative industries in general because the people that we're working with, if they're a film director, even if music supervisors, all the music supervisors I know are extremely creative people. Like we're all talking to creative people who have a vision and we're trying to it's another form of collaboration. It's no different than if I find another producer or that indie artist that I want to work with or someone else. We're all coming into a room to try to create something, and ultimately what draws us together, to your point, Matt, is the fact that we like each other, that I think you're a cool person, you think I'm a cool person. Hey, let's figure out what we can make together. And I think realizing that business is no different is just that that person might be paying for a service, or that person might be building a team, or that person might have funding, but it's still two creative people, or a group of creative people trying to come together, with people that they like, and make something that they believe in or that they'll enjoy making. I find sometimes with creative people at every level that the the other creative might know what they want or have a vision, but they may not also have the communication skills. They might, they might have the budget, they might be in charge of the decisions, but they might not always be able to communicate their vision the best, or in a way. And so, in some ways, it's on, I think, on all of us to like, really listen and try to hear what someone's saying, and then try to, you know, and either interpret that or make sure that we really kind of understand them. I kind of hear that in some of the story what you just shared, Matt, about the woman is kind of like what she was saying and then what she was really asking you. As you reflected on it, you really kind of understood more. She was trying to really understand this from black woman to black man. Do we kind of speak the same language or not? And so, um, um, do you feel, have either of you experienced that just with the filmmakers that you're working with, that you have to, where you've had to hear what they've said in the vision, but you also had to kind of dig deeper and understand, and then your ability to kind of understand what they really want help you to serve them better. Any thoughts along that line?
Yeah, I think every person I've worked with I've developed a different shorthand with that person. I often see myself as musically like uh, bilingual, or a translator sometimes, where I speak fluently the language of music and the language of storytelling, narrative, emotional language. But even every person I work with speaks a different dialect of that emotional narrative storytelling language that I have to decipher and learn what they mean when they say certain things or when they describe what they need. It's not, even though they might be using the exact same words that the last director I worked with or the last showrunner I worked with, they mean something slightly different. So I have to find the nuances in what they're talking about. And it's just building a new shorthand. And as you work with people over and over again, Matthew, I'm sure you know this, um, you develop that shorthand so that when they come back and you work with them again, you are already starting from a place of understanding, and then that understanding just grows on the next project, the next project. Some of the calls I've had with Ava on this Home Sweet Home show, she's very involved, like very involved in every aspect of the show, and I know every aspect of all the other shows that she's just like very hands on. We've developed a little bit of a short language that, and even it kind of in a silly way, she'll often tell me, I want some of the wingdings. And at first I was like, wingdings, okay, what? We had to figure, I had to figure out what she meant when she said wingdings. And over time, I found out that when she's telling me wingdings in this scene or in this moment, I need more wingdings. It's bell tree and these glockenspiel and tremolos and trills on the flute and trills in the violin. It's this airy feeling of magical floating, and that's when she tells me wingdings. I know exactly now what she means, and I add a little bit of a bell tree, add some magical, Disney kind of magic moment to that, to the family coming in the house for the first time and experiencing someone else's life for the very first time, and that that magical moment, that feeling of unease and like kind of nervousness. And so yeah, I mean, I think that kind of answers your question, that we just kind of, even though their directors will be saying similar things to us, they can sometimes mean something different than the last person we worked with. What do you think about that, Matthew? How's your experience with that?
Oh yeah, it's a you have to understand the language, and I think the cool thing about it is, you know, my biggest, I guess, very similar story is working on P Valley with Katori Hall, who is insanely involved. So involved that, she is giving me notes, immediately after I send them. Extremely involved. And she knows exactly what she wants to, and she's a musical person. Tori Hall has a Broadway background as a director, so she's done musicals, so she knows the lingo, and she'll say things, just, I need some grit, I need some grunt, I need some dirt here, I need this. The mix sounds too clean. That 808 is not dirty enough. With the content of the show and certain things that, as a matter of fact, Tori Hall's husband is a music producer as well, is an artist as himself. So, you know, she'll play him cues and he'll send notes. So it's like just understanding the language, understanding each other. But the beautiful thing about my relationship with Katori, or with any show I work on, I want to develop a friendship, a trust. So when you can be honest and not worry about hurting feelings, um putting up walls. I want to break down as many walls as possible, so we all can be on the same page and we all can be vulnerable together. So you can tell me. So the first thing I tell a lot of composers, a lot of producers, I told Katori, I said, be blunt. Tell me what you don't like. Tell me what you like, because all it does is helps me and makes me better. Um, and she's like, are you sure? I'm like, yeah. And so I'll get a blunt email and saying, hey, this is not it. I don't like it, And then she'll call me. Are you good? I'm like, I'm good. I need these conversations. And the beautiful thing about it is it's a culture, I don't know about you, Andrew, but also understanding the culture the culture of the show that you're working on. Like I'm working on P Valley. And if those who know P Valley, we, what we're, the stories that we're telling, we got to be blunt because the stories that you're watching are blunt, I'm pretty sure in a Disney movie, you might not get the bluntness of of I don't like it. You may get another conversation, but understanding the story that you're telling, and I think that's the biggest thing. One reason why I possibly lost the job, the composing job out in London, because I wasn't vulnerable. I didn't give that answer that was real. I gave the answer that felt like it was selling myself, and I think that's one thing that me personally draws me away from people, of you overselling the situation and just not being genuine, saying, "Hey, I make music. You know, I'm this person. I'm that person." So understanding the language, yes, it's important. And I just feel like building that trust so you can have those wing conversations is so important. Um, that it makes your job so much easier as a composer, because one thing that we have to do is crack the code. Like Andrew has to sit down and literally crack the code. I have to sit down. I got episode 2, and I have to sit down and crack the code and try to figure out. And I can't go by the temp music because the temp music sometimes doesn't work. And sometimes they just throw something in there for the edit and it might not be the right temp music. And so I have to kind of just literally, but I need that language with Katori to have these conversations like, yo, what you feeling right now, and be comfortable, um, which is cool. So I always suggest composers to do that. Just try to crack that code and be a little bit more, be as genuine as possible. So the the showrunner, director, the producers, they can be so comfortable with you to kind of give you the real answer, because they are real people. I think sometimes we kind of take that for granted. Like, these are real people. Like, a showrunner has so much on her plate. Like, Katori has so much on her plate that I want her to be so comfortable with me that she ain't got to worry about being PC and ice, stepping on toes. Like, no, tell me what you feel, because I need the best of you. I need the most genuine of you, so I can give the most genuine of me. So I think it works both ways, and I think that's what is missing from those coming from the music industry side, or thinking like, hey, I can just get some placements, or I can compose and score. Like, it's a little bit more, psychological than actual just physically sitting down writing sad music for a sad scene.
Yeah, and when directors and showrunners when they're at the point of hiring a composer, they're in a really vulnerable place. They maybe didn't get the coverage they wanted for certain scenes. They're maybe nervous as the edit is coming together, like how the film is turning out. It may not be exactly what was in their head, or there's all these other pressures going on, especially like for a showrunner on a TV show. Like, okay, we need to hire a composer, but we're still shooting the rest of the season, and
Yeah,
and they're going to start on episode 1, which airs in however many weeks. But we're still shooting, and I've got all these other problems on actual sets happening right now. So our best move and our best bet, and what we need to be for them, is a comfortable place for them to feel like, okay, this is at least the music is in good hands with this person, and I trust them, and I feel really comfortable. They're making me feel like I can communicate my needs because I got a lot of other stuff going on. I don't need to
yeah,
worry about if I'm going to offend Andrew with telling him that I don't like it. Like,
yeah,
they need to feel comfortable because they've got a lot. They're in a really vulnerable place, nearing the end of production and starting post, or being in the middle of post. There's a lot going on. So
yeah.
I
It's
love what you
it's
said.
it's yeah. It's so much going on, and and I like to tell people, um,
You're starting to break up for me, Matt.
so we are the that it's not coming off
Hey,
the right.
Matt, you're breaking up a lot.
If the app is strong enough. Oh, I'm
Okay,
sorry.
now,
Can you hear
yeah,
me?
yeah, but better now.
Can you hear me now? All right, my bad. I was moving around. I was moving around. So we're the glue, and sometimes the showrunner may look at a scene and the music and the actor didn't give enough strong enough performance, or like you said, the coverage wasn't right, or something's not hidden. As a matter of fact, the other day, I got a scene from a future episode of P Valley. Like, hey, this is not translating. Can you give us something? And the temp music they were trying to use and things they were trying to do was not working. And I was like, okay, let me see it. And I did it and sent it off. But this is three episodes ahead of of what I'm scoring now. I'm scoring episode 2 now, but episode 5 is being cut. And here's this one scene's not working because they can't present it to someone else without the scene working. And it's a very pivotal scene. And it was like, okay, let me figure it out and let me stop what I'm doing here and do that. And I think that's our job. Is that's what we're supposed to do. And so yeah, it's very, very, very important to understand those languages, those vulnerable languages. And you're absolutely right, Andrew. Like, yeah, we are sometimes the most important with the shortest amount of time to do things. But that's why we do what we do, you know?
Something you said made me think of this analogy that I think about often, and it goes viral. Like, I'm sure like our aunts have sent it to us in an email. It goes on Facebook every like 10 years or something. It's been bouncing around for a while, and normally it's a metaphor for like what you fill your life with. So the story is this professor. It's probably a fake story, but this professor comes into his college class with a giant pickle jar, an empty giant pickle jar, and he fills it with ping pong balls. And the ping pong balls bounce around, and he fills it all the way to the top, just so that he could put the lid on. There's no room for another ping pong ball, and he asks his students, "Is the jar full?" And they all go like, they look around, and they're like, "Yeah, you can't put another ping pong ball in that jar without closing the lid." So then he brings out a bag of pebbles, small rocks, and he pours the pebbles inside, and the rocks bounce around and fill the space between the ping pong balls. And he's like, "Well, what about now? Is it full now?" And they're like, "Oh yeah, it's totally full. Like, I see what you mean. Now it's full." So then he pulls out a bag of sand and he pours the sand in, and the sand fills the space even between the pebbles. And they're like, "Oh God, yeah, no, definitely full now." And the last thing he pulls out is some water, and he pours the water in, and the water fills the space between the sand, the grains of sand, and just soaks up the sand and fills right to the top of the jar. And they're like, they're starting to get it. And normally that is like a metaphor for like, these are the things you fill your life with or something. I don't know. I don't really remember. But for me, it speaks to me about film and TV and the entertainment industry that we work in, and that everybody on these really great shows and these really great movies, everybody fills the jar as much as they can before passing the jar to the next part of the process. And our job in near the end is the water. And you know what? Sometimes maybe there's not enough sand, or maybe there's the people who put the ping pong balls could have put more ping pong balls in the early part of the process, but it's still our job to fill the jar. So sometimes there's just requires more music there, or not music, sorry, more water near the end of the process to fill that jar, but we still have to fill that jar. But on the real, and that's what, people will say to me like, "Oh, your music made me cry." And I always think of that metaphor because it's not the only thing in the jar, you know?
Yeah.
It's like it's the ping pong balls, the sand, the pebbles, and the water that made you cry, you know?
Yep.
And
Yep.
but
Exactly.
yeah, sometimes like you said, we didn't get the coverage or the scene isn't working. Can you help us so that we can show it to the network, and that they give us a thumbs up on the edit, but they won't give us that thumbs up if this scene isn't working. Can you come in with a little extra water? And we got to
Yeah.
say, yeah, I'm ready. Let's do it.
Yeah. It's very, yeah, we have to. I mean, and that's perfectly example. Like, that's why I tell people, all the time, especially young composers I work with and talk to, service the show. What does it feel like? What is it? What is it called for? Does it call for just a piano? Does it call for strings? Does it call for this melody? Get all that theory out your head. Eric's been in the room with me with musicians, and they're literally throwing out these musical theories, and I just stop and say, "Hey, y'all, does it sound good though? Like, does it sound good? Like,
Or no.
are we really having a debate about, theory and placement and rhythm?" I remember, we were working on Greenleaf, and I was doing, and it happened again, Eric, on Mahalia when we did Mahalia. But on Greenleaf, we were working on a song, and I didn't want a click track. I was like, we're going to start with no click track because everything was sounding too stagnant, and I was like, the drummer is the click. So we're gonna go off his emotion. And he looked at me, he was like, I need a click track. I was like, no, you don't. You don't need a click track. Eric was in the room like, you don't need a click track. You just need to play the song. Like, let's go. 1, 2, 3, go. And the song came out great. And even the engineer was like, we need a click track because when I do my edits, I'm like, no, we're not gonna edit. We're gonna do this right the first time. We're gonna go all the way through, and we're gonna do it right again. We're gonna do it all over again. but we need that emotionally soul vibe, and we need it. And I'm like, and so once we finished, everything was done. They were like, "Oh man, it sounds good, but a click shot would have been better because it would have." I like, but does it sound good? Do you feel the emotion? And we sent it off to the show, and the show like, "Thank you. This was exactly what we needed." I'm like, "Told you." So it's like, does it sound good? Does it feel good? Does it give you the emotion? Does it serve the emotion that's needed? And that's all that matters. All the other stuff, you know. I mean, I've had conversations with guys about certain plugins and what they need and what string plugin are you using. I mean, we can go deep into that conversation. I was like, bro, you don't got to buy all these plugins. Just use what you have. Does it sound good? Does it give the emotion that you needed? That's needed for the scene. So it's just that's the beautiful thing about composing. We got so many tools in our toolbox, but we just have to know which tool to use at the right time, and hopefully it works.
And they're all just tools. Like music theory is just a tool, to use to make you work faster. So great. It's a Neapolitan 7 chord. Sounds awesome, but does it work? you
Yeah,
know.
yes, yes. I've done and I even tricked myself. Like like I said, this documentary I'm working on. The music supervisor is a really good guy, really cool guy, but he's a musical supervisor and he's throwing out these musical terms. And I had to have a conversation with him, like, hey man, you're confusing them. Because we were doing notes and having our spotting session, and he's giving out these terms. And literally, the director and the producer are just literally confused. I'm like, hey man, let's not use certain words around them. Let's just be very blunt and be very blank because um, it's going to confuse them. They don't know what a seventh chord is, so let's not say that. Or minor seventh, or G major. They don't know G major. They don't know that, and so yeah, it's just about being open and just finding the right communication path, and that's really it.
You're like on this Home Sweet Home show. I'm working with a lot of my cues. I'm starting out with an open fifth, and
Hmm.
so there's no information in the chord. You don't know if it's sad or happy. It's just an open fifth. And for people listen, I mean, I think we're surrounded by composers, but this is just an open fifth. There's no third to
Yeah.
make it happy, to make it sad. There's no seven to make it a little bit more, a little depth in the sad. It's just we
Yep.
don't know,
Open
and
for.
then it starts to fill in. It's almost like because these families are learning about. That's a choice I made musically, but Ava doesn't know. We're not having that kind of conversation. She just knows that it feels like what's going to happen next. Oh, it starts to then it's as the cue happens, it starts to fill in. But we
Yep.
don't talk about that stuff. But that's the tool. I'm using a tool. I'm using music theory. I'm using like those kinds of musical elements. But we don't need to share that always and every part of that with the person that's hiring us, as long as it feels right. We just need to make sure that it feels the way it feels. Uh,
That's all that matters. They don't care.
yeah, exactly.
The suits up top don't care. Once they just want to make sure it feels right. And I've had these debates and conversations with musicians and um, just certain people about it. Like, hey, bro, we're just gonna make music today. So yeah, definitely, there are certain tricks that we have that we use. You know, and as long as it's working, that's all that matters. That's how I look at it. I don't care how I get there, as long as I get there. Um, and I think that's really, really as more you dive into composing, and more others dive into composing, you'll see that all of that. I mean, the beautiful training that you have works. Of course, you need all that training, but all of that tools you have, sometimes it literally just go by just using that one hammer that you know how to use. And um, I've worked on complex scores, or I haven't worked on scores that were just literally, like you said, open fifths chords, and just uh, does it work? Does it not work? So stuff like that is important, very very important, and also understanding the story. That's one thing about with P Valley. Why I think we work well together because I understand the culture and the story of it. I feel every piece, every scene. So it's one of those things where I can relate to it a lot. Especially, I mean, just the script wise and the characters, and that's one thing that I think a lot of showrunners want to see that you are involved in this story as well as much as possible. You're just not the guy sitting in the studio making the music to make it feel good. Like you literally are invested. And I think being invested will allow you to communicate and also create the sound that
I
warrants the
like
scene.
how
So
like um I like how I mean we're just about to wrap up. We've been doing this going on 2 hours now, so we're going to start right at the top of the hour. So we just got a couple minutes left. So as we're wrapping up, I really like that we've been talking is a couple of hours, and most of the conversation has been about relationships, communication, kind of genuineness, friendships. Only in the last few minutes did you guys even start getting into like actual compositional approaches, and I think that's just indicative of the mindsets of of the creators. I think that's something that's both worked. Just I know a little bit about Andrew Jim, just meeting you, just hearing your story, and Matt and I have been friends for years, but just I get the feeling with both of you is the people side, why we're in this, the people side, the relationship side is as important or more important than the technical music side. And I always feel like I feel like as a creator I'm that way too, but I feel like I came later to realize that from a business I was always very much like craft, work on the craft, work on the craft, work on the craft, and actually just I think I've always been nice, a nice person, but I think in terms of being vulnerable and putting myself out there to just even meet people or um, build those connections and make people introduce myself to people, just being friends and making friends. I think I've been slow to that, and it's only in the last number of years that I've been more like, you know what, I want friends in this industry that I'm working in, and I want to build friendships, and so I really like that that's been the focus of the convo. I think probably other conversations we'll have as we do these on Sundays. We might focus a little more on the technical side, talk about approaches and compositional approaches and that. But I think um, I I really appreciate that at the heart of building your both of your film score careers, the focus has been on people and relationships. It's really, really cool to see.